This video is focusing on pelvic floor. Now, if you've never had any pelvic floor issues, great. See this as a preventative measure. And if you have any pelvic floor issues like stress incontinence, involuntary leakage, it could be urine, it could be wind, then these will be great. Not only for creating that awareness, but also creating strength, a bit of lengthening, which is equally important, and also just working the general area or some of the influences into the pelvic floor. So if you have got a ball, then it's very useful, but really don't worry if you don't have a ball. If you do have a ball, just take quite a lot of the air out, so it's about a third. It could probably be more deflated than this. But the first thing I'm going to do is just remind you of some of the specific pelvic floor exercises that you can do. So there are probably lots, but I've been talking about 3 lately. One of them is just the ability to lift your pelvic floor, and you can do that with your breath. So when you breathe in, the pelvic floor descends, as does your diaphragm, and then as you exhale, they both lift. So if you want to connect to your pelvic floor, it's quite a nice idea to do that with the out breath. There's that natural lift, and that might help you to feel that sensation. And actually, just to remind you, for women, we have the back passage, the middle, and the front. So we have our rectum, we have our vagina, and our urethra, whereas for men, it's just the 2. So you can engage kind of all 3 of them, or all 2 of them, and squeeze and lift, or you can focus on the back passage. So kind of that idea of stopping wind, that's also quite a useful way of finding the pelvic floor. Just make sure that you don't squeeze your bum or move your pelvis in any way, because that's doing too much. So one way, like I say, is just using the breath and just kind of making sure that you can connect with your pelvic floor. Then is to lift your pelvic floor and hold it. Can you manage to hold that contraction and still breathe? That's when you have to breathe with your rib cage, so allowing the ribs to move in and out rather than the stomach to move in and out. Then the second one will be to allow the pelvic floor to kind of lift up through stages or floors or steps or whatever you want to think about. So it's this idea of it not being off or on, but actually it could be on 50%, it could be on 75%, etc. So once you've lifted up, there's also the ability to releasing slowly, because that's also a very important skill, that sense of releasing slowly. So that's the second one. And the third one is just to be able to do the rapid ones, the quick squeeze and release. And those are particularly good. So for example, if you've got stress incontinence, then it's a good idea to kind of actively squeeze and hold before you jump, cough, or sneeze or anything like that. So those are the pelvic floor exercises. I suggest you do them daily for the rest of your life, really. They don't have to be done for hours or minutes even, but just kind of make sure that you connect with them on a daily basis. So that's your pelvic floor exercises. So I'll leave you to do them on the own because it's not very interesting to do on a video. And then the other thing we're going to focus on here is releasing the pelvic floor. Because that's equally important. That pelvic floor needs to be able to lengthen so that it can contract. And then the alignment becomes very key, because the legs obviously feed into your pelvis, so whatever the legs do will influence your pelvis, which will obviously influence your pelvic floor, and it's the same with the upper body. So the rib cage, the alignment of your rib cage becomes very important. So we need to make sure that the ribs are not sticking out in front, but actually the front bottom rib is drawn down and is stacked directly on top of the front of the pelvis as well. So alignment is key when it comes to pelvic floor, because that's how it will function and connect in a really effective and efficient way. So that does mean that wearing heels, for example, will throw your alignment, so that's not great for your pelvic floor, etc. But that's a big topic. Okay, so that's your pelvic floor. If you want to sit on a ball, you could do that. That's quite a nice way of feeling that connection when you are breathing in. So like I said, breathing out lifts your pelvic floor, breathing in allows it to release. So if you want to try that on a ball, if you have a ball, if not, just take a breath in, a normal breath in, and as you breathe out, imagine and picture and sense also that idea of pelvic floor and the diaphragm lifting up, and then as you inhale, they both descend, and you might be able to feel that if you're on a ball. But I'm not going to spend a lot of time here on the ball. What I'm going to do next is just come onto hands and knees. Okay, so Engaging the pelvic floor works really well when you're breathing out, more that forceful exhale. And like I said, it's really important that you can lengthen your pelvic floor too. So this is a bit of a release. So what I want you to do is just let your pelvis tilt forwards, let the ribs relax, let the head relax. And then you could put a hand on your stomach. And then you're going to inhale. Now when you inhale, you're going to relax the stomach completely. Because if you always pull your stomach in to make it look flatter, the content of the stomach will go either up into your diaphragm or down into your pelvic floor. Neither is great for your pelvic floor. So you need to be able to release. And as you're breathing in here, the stomach expands and hopefully you feel the opening and lengthening of your pelvic floor. And then you breathe out, you pull everything in, all the way in, but I'm not tucking my pelvis. So this is really handy to do in front of a mirror. So you're going to inhale, release, 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 release. But you're not tilting the pelvis more. There's none of your bones are moving. And then you're breathing out all the way, all the way, all the way. So not only feel that the stomach and its content comes back in, but there's that sense of lifting from behind too. So maybe do one more here. Inhale, all the way in, allowing the stomach to really expand. So this is not a place to judge yourself. This is where you're allowing yourself to relax. And then that full exhale, 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 exhale. All the way out. Okay, great. Now you're going to just bring yourself back up into more of your normal alignment for anything on your hands and knees. You're going to go a little bit wide with your knees and then tuck the toes, and then you're going to inhale, come back, and then exhale, come forwards. So this is kind of prepping or like a kneeling squat here. So what we're doing is we're focusing on folding from the hips and coming back with that flat back. Now again, if you have a ball, you can always put your ball there. It has to be deflected, if not it will roll straight up. Because what we want to avoid is that tugging of the pelvis, okay? Because that creates a shortening. And in this position, we want to lengthen the pelvic floor as we sit back. Ooh, I don't know if it's going to fall off. And then exhale when we come forwards. So this is a great position to be in if you find your regular squats, your standing squats difficult. And just bear in mind, this is another good position just to work on your pelvic floor, but your pelvic floor responds best in the position you train it in. So if you need it for everyday life, being upright, then practice a lot of pelvic floor recruitment when you are upright. Okay, so from here, you're going to bring your knees back in, and then you are going to just take one leg out behind you. You could use one hand just on the lower part of your stomach. You can breathe in, and as you breathe out, feel like the stomach comes away from your hand ever so slightly as you squeeze your butt and you lift your leg. And then you inhale, you return. So you exhale, lift the leg, and then inhale, return. So remember what I said about walking being really good for your pelvic floor, especially if you can get the back of the hips, so that's your bum and the back of the leg, to bring the leg up behind you without creating any movement in the lower back. So you're breathing out, you're breathing in. Now I'm not going to do a lot of repetition on each of them, so I suggest if you want to make this a bit more of an exercise routine, just pause the video, do a few more repetitions. And then I'm going to bring the knee in and I'm going to do the same to the side. Well, not the same, it's totally different, but I'm moving my leg to the side. The same thing is I'm not trying to move my pelvis. So from a breathing perspective, I'm going to inhale to open the leg out and exhale to return. I'm going to inhale. So that's that kind of widening of the sit bones, a bit of a stretch, and come back. And then you can just do some circles here as well. So remember, the more mobile your hips are, the more dynamic your pelvic floor is likely to be. So you can get this movement just in the hip, and then I'm not kind of moving the whole body, not that there'll be anything wrong with that, but from a pelvic floor perspective, we want to keep it still. I'll do the same for this other side. So leg behind, hand on the lower part of your stomach, breathe in, and then breathe out. Squeeze and lift the leg, and then return. Now notice it's not a big lift. I'm not lifting up here. It's just a very small hip extension, and then a release. I'm breathing out, and I'm breathing in. So both my abdominals and my glutes, my bum, is working. They're both kind of keeping the pelvis still. And I want you to focus on your butt, so really make sure you squeeze your butt. No bent knees, that takes it into the hamstrings only. Okay, one more. Now you're going to bend your knee, and then you're going to go out to the side. Now if I show it from the front. So what we want to try and avoid here is this leaning over. So each time I lift the leg, I don't want to lean over. So I'm still and the leg moves. And I'm going to inhale to lift the leg, which might be different to what we would normally do, but I'm thinking of this sense of opening up the sit bone. So remember, your pelvic floor is attached from the pubic bone to the tail and in between the sit bones, like this sling underneath you. Okay, and then you can do some circles. And then you change direction. Now check in on your ribs here. Remember, we don't want ribs flaring, that's not great for the pelvic floor. We want kind of all the cavities, so that's your chest, your stomach and your pelvis, we want them to be stacked so they can contract in a really balanced way. Okay, so keep circling the leg, relatively quiet in the hips, and then come back. Now you could stay here and do your thread the needle here, or you can come back into this position here, just keeping the tail kind of ever so slightly lifted, not arched, but just not tucked. And then you can thread the needle here and come back. Now because the diaphragm is attached just below your ribs, the position and the ability for your ribs to move becomes really important. We need the ribs to be mobile so they can expand and allow their diaphragm to move outwards and backwards as well, and not just down, which creates a lot of extra tension and extra pressure on the pelvic floor. So any kind of twist, any rib movement is particularly helpful. Okay, I'm going to come back. And then I'm going to lie on the side. So if you have a ball, you could pop it in underneath your waist. Actually, let's start with the rib cage. Let's just start here. You could just lie on a cushion, roll up a towel or something, and then just take a couple of breaths into your ribs here. So just allowing the ribs to expand into the side of the rib. Because it's really important for a healthy pelvic floor, the rib cage needs to be able to move. Okay, so I'm just going to do one more breath here. You could spend a lot longer there, of course, but I'm going to move the ball into my waist, and then I'm going to lie down. I'm going to stack my knees, stack my feet, stack everything you have a pair of. So eyes, shoulders, hips, ankles, everything there's two of is stacked. Make sure you're not sinking into the ball, so you're kind of pushing that top hip away, and then you're going to breathe in to prepare, breathe out, do a little clam. So the knees lift, the feet stay together. And then you lower the knee, and then you inhale, you lift the whole leg. Not just the foot, not just the knee, the whole leg. So I exhale, I clam. I don't think that's a verb, but that's okay. Inhale, lift the leg. Exhale. Make sure the hips are still. So you could put a hand on your hip if you want. And then inhale. Sorry, that's the exhale. And then inhale. Okay. Exhale. And inhale. I'm going to do one more. One more. So what you want to avoid here is rolling. And you'll feel when the ball underneath you whether you are rolling. Now keep the leg up and then just do a little tap, foot and knee. So again, you're just kind of rolling the thigh bone around in the hip socket. So I can't remember who now referred to the legs as the puppeteers of your pelvic floor, but basically the legs and how they activate and how they move in your hip has a direct impact on the pelvic floor. So make sure you move your legs in the hip sockets. Okay, now bring the leg down, bring your arms in front. You could put a towel under your head now, a little pad, and then we're going to do some book openers. Again, just to mobilise and open up the upper body, which is mainly to do with the ability to breathe. I guess that's essential for a healthy pelvic floor. So I'm going to inhale, slide the arm forwards, and then I'm going to just slide it across my chest and then reach behind. Palms are up, I look to the arm that's moving. I'm trying not to roll onto my back. My knees are relatively stacked, and then I just come back the same way. So I go forwards, and I go back, and then return. I'm just going to do one more. I love these. I could spend a lot of time here, and if you want to double up, again, just pause the video and then return. So I'm going to do the same on the other side. So starting with the ball under the rib, I just cup my hands. So really what I want is get this arm out of the way so I can breathe fully into the armpit and into the ribs.
keep a hand on the rib if you want. But you really want to feel, so actually what the ribs do is they kind of flip on their side and then they open. And that's what creates space for the air to come in, so the diaphragm doesn't have to kind of plunge down into the stomach cavity, which is going to push down extra onto the pelvic floor. A little bit, yes, absolutely, but we don't want that to be the only way the diaphragm can go. So just some big directed breaths even into the ribs here, and then we're going to move it into the waist. Okay, I'm sorry, I've got the sniffles. So, what am I doing here? Okay, so I bring the feet back a little bit, I line up with the back of the mat, I take a breath in to prepare, and again, you don't want the tummy out in front at this point, you want to draw the ribs in, you want to push the hip out so that, not out, away, so that waist is equal-ish, and then you exhale to lift the knee, and you're rotating in the socket here, and then you inhale to lift the whole leg. So when you exhale, the sit bones, those are the bony bits underneath your pelvis, come together. And then when you inhale and open the whole leg up, they come apart. Okay, so there's kind of a bit of stretch and strengthen going on. Now, if the breath is confusing, and I know lots of you have been saying that the breath is confusing when it comes to pelvic floor, then don't worry too much about it. Movement is great. That's going to move the pelvic floor anyway. And the breath is only there to kind of guide and get a little bit more out of it, but it's not a necessity. Okay, I'm going to do one more again of each. So again, you want to avoid rolling back, so when the knee comes back down, it's directly stacked on top of the other one. And then I keep the leg lifted and I do the little tap. So this is kind of just internal and external rotation of the hip. Remember, hip mobility really comes up in every theme that we have in terms of hugely important for overall health, basically, whether it's bone health or spinal health or whatever we're talking about. Okay, now I'm going to bring it together and then do my book opener, which is lovely, especially if you tight chest and shoulders. You're going to inhale, slide forwards, and then you're going to bring your arm back, look behind, and then return. So again, like most things, you really need to address the whole body. It's not enough just to do pelvic floor exercises or cable exercises on their own. You really need to address the whole body. So that includes alignment, but also just how your body parts move or not move, which is often the case. Releasing. Oh, that feels great. And then you're going to come back. And then you're going to push yourself up, and then we're just going to finish standing up. So, I don't know if you can see me still on the screen, actually, I haven't checked that out. What we're going to do is we're just going to do some squats, okay? So, when we're squatting, what we're doing is we're allowing the pelvic floor to lengthen. And then when you lift, you're squeezing your bum. So I'm really sorry if this is going to cut my head off, but I'm not going to start again. Okay, so it's an inhale to come down, and again, make sure you're not tucking your tailbone under or arching. It's just long, and then squeeze your bum and open up the hips as you come up. So inhale, sit back, and then exhale, squeeze and come up. Inhale back. So squatting is great for just overall functioning, particularly great for your pelvic floor. And you can do that you can go wider as well, of course, come wide, you can come down here, you can hang out a little bit, and then of course you can practice your contractions here, that inhale opening and that exhale contracting. And then of course, I can't do this without showing the squatty potty and why it matters. So the squatty potty is just a tool to lift your feet up when you go to eliminate, because it creates these angles that helps to relax your pelvic floor, so you can smooth out the kink in your rectum, so your poo basically doesn't have to go around the bend to come out. It's that simple. And then you can put your elbows on your thighs. So as you can see, this is slightly deeper squat than just here. Yeah, you haven't got quite the same angles. You haven't smoothed, I don't know if that's the word, you haven't released that kink. So when you are squatting without any of that, this is kind of your chair height. I want to see if you could just go that little bit lower. And also, using this squatty potty, it's great just for your office chair, for example, so that you just spend time in that squat position, because the more you do, the easier it will become.